All right, everyone. So here we are with another podcast, and this one's going to be a good one as usual. We have Emily, who actually stayed here with her family for 3 weeks in the summertime, and she's going to share her story. And exciting, we've been doing this sort of format where Dr. Caesar's also on the call, and he's going to talk about the latest results that Emily has. And I want everybody that's watching this you're going to want to hear this story. Emily is a fantastic person. And just to hear her story is going to be so encouraging for so many people out there. So, for those of you that are going through a healing journey, maybe you're stage 4, maybe it's metastasized, this is something you're going to want to hear. Emily is a wealth of knowledge, and we're going to dig into that today. And then we're going to actually talk about the results, which are pretty fantastic. So thank you, Emily, for coming on.
Yeah, thank you, Dave, for all the kind things. I appreciate that. It was a year. 2024 was quite a year. I had my very first mammogram because I had, as an older mother, I was pregnant at 40 and breastfeeding at 41 when the recommended mammograms start. And like you say, had a sort of de novo stage 4 diagnosis out the gate, which I always say is actually the biggest blessing that I could have had. Because I think when, you know, conventional medicine is convinced metastatic, there's nothing that they can do to get to essentially ever have cancer free. You will never be cancer free, I was told.
Right.
In those early days, this is terminal. You will be treating this for your entire life, and this is it, which is a lot to hear when you're going home to a 2 and a 4 year old. And I was curious. I'm a curious person by nature, and I think I just became curious about cancer treatment. And, I think it also struck everyone around me as like very strange. Wait, you have breast cancer. Okay, well, when do you get the mastectomy, or when do you do all these things? When is your chemo? And I'm like, no chemo, no surgery, no radiation. They just start you on some hormone, because I have hormone positive breast cancer. So they started me on hormone inhibitors and then a CDK4/6 inhibitor. Um,
But so
but I,
just so I know, Emily, sorry to interrupt, but so they're telling you though, even so they can't do surgery, they can't do chemo, they can't do radiation. You have stage 4 metastatic breast cancer, which has metastasized to the bone, you said?
yeah, to multiple places in my skeleton. So I had in my left hip, I think in T2 and L4 in my vertebrae, um, in my pelvis. Uh, yeah,
And what
multiple
was
spots.
their best prognosis, even if you go on these hormone blockers and whatever else they gave you? What was their prognosis?
Well, they wouldn't. I maybe I didn't, or maybe I didn't inquire. Or Jacob is very good about this in the. Sorry, like, oh, I didn't realize how brain dead I would be this late in the
That's
evening
okay.
on the East Coast. No, just how basically we did not get prognosis a lot, or prognoses from the different oncologists we interviewed, because Jacob early on decided and told me very firmly that nobody can tell you when you're going to die, and he doesn't
Exactly.
believe that. And
I love that.
and
That's awesome.
but they did say, like, I think it was like a 20, or when I went to the site and Googled it when Jake wasn't in the room,
Yeah.
it was like 20% survival rate at 5 years. But they were saying that, with these new CDK4/6 inhibitors, we can keep it stable. That's what they kept telling me. We can't really get rid of it, but we can keep it stable. And these medicines work for about 5 years to keep it stable. And then beyond that, we have to move to the next line. The good news is there's lots of lines behind that first line, but that first line is your best bet. And I was on it for 3 weeks, and really upset my liver. My liver was like, no, 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 no. Um, so I only did that treatment for 3 weeks, and then I'm doing essentially a third of what their recommended protocols were.
Okay.
Prince, sorry, my dog just jumped up and was gonna eat some of the children's leftovers.
No worries. So then you didn't even really do so it was 3 weeks of doing that. And they said, okay, well, you're gonna have to deal with the fact that you have cancer in your body. So then what natural treatments did you start exploring and what did you start doing?
Well, I initially I signed up with, and it's a doctor of Oriental medicine who works with us, doctor of pharmacy, and come up with supplement protocols. So I
Right?
actually went on a pretty aggressive supplement protocol that included a couple of non-natural things that I've seen a couple people, when they talk, everybody hesitates when they talk about it because if you want, sometimes they take things down, or sometimes, you're not able to say things without it being somehow erased from
Right.
the media but anyway, so I did a couple of those things. But I also was able to get a PEMF device, the Hugo that has like the blankets. I really started early on with like very frequent infrared sauna and hyperbaric oxygen. And yeah, and then I started reading about mistletoe,
Okay, so
and I really wanted,
can I ask specifically? So back to did some of these are you talking about repurposed drugs?
no,
Oh, what were you talking?
I'm talking about chlorine dioxide
Oh,
and
okay, okay,
uh,
got it, got it. Okay. I just was trying to confirm. Okay, so you did that
yeah.
and then the hyperbaric oxygen chamber, how many times did you do that and how often? And do you remember like specifics like what pressure they had you at, how long you did it?
I don't know the pressure on their system, but I did for an hour. And interestingly, I was only able to afford to go. Well, no, I was going like 3 times a week because they had. So I had one that was a hard shell, the um, true hyperbaric oxygen chamber, and I could only afford that one like every other week. And then I went to a mild
Okay.
hyperbaric oxygen like 3 times a week, and they were like hour-long sessions each time.
Okay. And
And then
how many sessions did you do approximately?
I, I am unsure, but many, many,
Okay.
many. Let's see, like 3 times a week for a few months.
Okay. Because
Or or even now, I still go once a week, but
because if I remember correctly, you thought getting oxygen in your tissues using the hyperbaric, you thought that was I mean, you thought that was a big piece of the puzzle in your healing.
yeah, yeah, I do. I think that that came from my previous knowledge of Dr. John Sarno's work. So he was at NYU for years, and he called it tension myositis syndrome. And I had very recurrent debilitating back pain in my teens and early 20s. And I thought, I came from a family where people had recurrent debilitating back pain. And I was told, I had degenerative discs, and I had all these, bad back. I had inherited this bad back, and I shouldn't wear heels, and I should, always strengthen my core and stretch my hamstrings. So I actually got my yoga teacher certification because I got really into yoga, stretching my hamstrings and strengthening my core. And my back still went out. And I happened upon his book, Healing Back Pain, the Mind Body Connection. And I think there's just a lot to be said for our neurovasculature, how it's connected to unconscious emotion or unprocessed emotions, and oxygen distribution in the body, and even your circulatory system. And so I was able to heal from a very real physical pain in my life that had happened that I thought I was stuck with for my whole life, because that's what the doctors told me, is that, you know what, you will just deal with this your whole life. You have a bad back. You may have to have surgery someday if the discs start to bulge or whatever. And then I read his book and it was like, you can put two x-rays up and have the same exact disc bulge, and one person will have pain and one other person will not. So it's not coming from the disc bulge, it's coming from a deprivation of oxygen to the nerve cells.
Right.
And so it just was interesting because in the areas where I did get the cancer in my bones, they were classically places where I'd had pain previously.
Oh, interesting.
And cancer is drawn to low oxygenated
Right.
areas, apparently. So I was like, okay, well, just yet another confirmation for me that the power of mind body medicine is extraordinary, and how deeply that's connected to, you know, your life purpose and spirituality and all of the radical remission factors. So
Oh yeah, Radical Remission. I mean that I'm glad you plugged them because they're amazing and I love we obviously do that at the Healing Oasis. We go through their 10 healing factors. But oh, so you also did the infrared sauna, which I find interesting. So you sweat out a lot of toxins, obviously.
yeah, early on, I got a grant from the White Horse Foundation, which is Rami Whiteman. She's been on the Radical Remission podcast, but she's a stage four thriver who pays for, she also did the terrain advocacy program, which I'm currently enrolled in at the Metabolic uh, Terrain Institute of Health. Dr. Nasha Winters
Oh,
runs,
yeah.
uh, among other people, you know, she's one of the head docs there or whatever. But basically Rami gave me a grant to get my nutrition genome done. And so I actually found out early on that I have a couple of um, MTHFR variations, which affect my body's ability to detoxify from things. And I knew, you know, I'd never been able to drink alcohol. It like really, really harmed me. And I thought from the actual, um, even from the pharmaceutical, the CDK4/6 inhibitor, or chemo pill, as they were calling it earlier in my journey, um, and just how my body reacted to that, and my liver just struggles to stay on top of things. Well, I have two variants that do make that methylation process sort of difficult. And then, you know, had black mold exposure for 3 years from 2015 to 2018. And I was a person who very much fell into the camp of listening to the um, media, or the I guess the, I don't even know what to call it, the common news of the day on COVID. I I used to be very much more trusting of my own instincts. And when I had preeclampsia with my daughter, I sort of had to hand over this, like, it was very difficult for me to deal with giving conventional medicine that much power. But because of, you know, she was endangered, and I'm a new mother, which also is connected to a lot of my gene variants. Um, but either way, I had lost my empowerment on my own health journey in my first pregnancy, and that was that was the year before COVID, or I had her in 2019 in September, and we brought home a 4-pound baby from the NICU, and I did go down a little bit of a rabbit hole about vaccines at the time, because they were trying to convince me to vaccinate her at 4 pounds, even though the literature on it said to wait until she was 6 pounds. And then when I refused, they treated me like I was abusing her. And I was like, hmm? What? It says right here she's supposed to be 6 pounds. I'm confused why you're treating me so poorly. And then I think I got sort of labeled by my pediatrician as vaccine hesitant. And then, but the irony is, during that time, in reading and filtering through what I could perceive as truth or reality, was the fact that the vaccine manufacturers cannot be held culpable for, you know, be held responsible for vaccine injury is because we want these manufacturers to be in business if we ever do have a pandemic and we need them to create the vaccines.
Right.
So there was this like justification for what, well, it was already kind of seedy, but when COVID started to happen, everything started to, and my aunt is a geriatric nurse. My family are full of nurses. We have a lot of conventional medicine practitioners in our close spheres. And all of the conventional docs that we know and love were very like news of the day. I don't know, just following suit with the vaccines. And I wasn't going to vaccinate my children with the COVID-19 vaccine, but I am a school teacher going into, big or an environment with a lot of people every day. And I had babies at home. So I got the vaccine myself and I got like, I think I had like 7 of them, like every year. Every time I went to the doctor and they told me I needed one, I was like, okay, whatever, you give it to me, try to protect my babies. And now I think a lot of my blood work is also showing there's new studies coming out about the IgG or which
Right.
I can't pretend to understand, and maybe Dr. Caesar knows or can speak to. But anyway, there was a lot of things that I was like, okay, I need to help my body detoxify in every possible way that I can. So I immediately.
Can we spend a little bit of time on that? Because I think detoxing is something we don't talk a lot about. So, how specifically, and maybe just do it as succinctly as you can, but what did you do exactly to detox? What was your methods?
So I immediately changed my diet. I went on a complete whole foods, plant-based, mostly blue zone-esque diet. Lots of legumes, lots of cruciferous vegetables, absolutely no sugar. No honey, no replacement for sugar, just taking that out completely, taking out 99% of all processed foods in general, like really only allowing myself a piece of gluten-free bread every other day or like, you know, a tortilla chip. I mean, just like very strictly looking at what I was putting in my body and eating. Um, then we actually just invested in a new Wet 7 model reverse osmosis filter, but I was doing just lots of clean water, making sure that I was drinking, half my body weight in ounces a day. We got a structuring wand. I read Cancer in the New Biology of Water like early on in my journey. Have you read that, Dave? You would love that
No,
book.
I've read most of the books you've recommended, but I don't think I've read that one. But I have, you just caught me at half the your body weight in water a day.
No, in ounces. Like if you're, oh, because we do pounds. Do you guys
Okay,
not?
got it.
Do you
In
do,
ounces. Okay, so
yeah.
how many, like how many glasses a day
So
did?
I'm, uh, well, like at least 80 ounces, 82, yeah, nothing crazy,
So
but
about
like,
just making sure, because I heard a lot of people just they're totally dehydrated, most people, so they're not getting enough clean water to even cleanse their body. It's just such
hmm
an under, most people don't value that enough. Just get a lot of water.
hmm And I had like a pH balancing. I don't actually know what it was. It was like a
An
big
alkalizer, yeah, okay.
pump. Yeah, like a pump. And then just adding sea salt to that. I did some kelp, like, smoothies, or I would like put kelp on things early on. I don't know if it, I mean, I think that the chlorine dioxide was very detoxifying. In addition to that, I did uh, about once a week. No, it wasn't that often. It's so much to handle with the kids. We live in a very small house. But I would do coffee enemas. Oh, we got a juicer. We got a Nama juicer, which is awesome. And um,
And
we
how often would you do the infrared sauna and sweat out stuff? How often did you do that?
3 times a week. So we were lucky enough to have we have a health club here in town that I was able to join, and it was like I could do three modality or 3 half-hour sessions of whatever I chose per day. And, for a really reasonable $300 a month or something, So I went 3 times a week and I would do an hour of hyperbaric oxygen and a half an hour of sauna. And
Oh,
then sometimes I would do half an hour sauna with a cold dip. So the contrast therapy,
eh, oh,
which
interesting. And
and
did
they
you,
also had cryo. I did cryo as well.
okay. And you said you did pulse electric magnetic frequency as well?
Yeah. So that was an interesting story because that felt like a prayer, or like I don't know, an answer to a prayer. It felt like a conversation with God a little bit, because I had a, what's it called? Root canal on the same side as my tumor, which is very common. But I had a root canal, and early after my diagnosis, my dentist is a friend of mine. She's not the one who had me get a root canal years ago. This is old-ish. No, it wasn't. Oh my God, when I was first pregnant with Murphy. So 5 years ago, I had the root canal. Anyway, she was like, "You need to get that tooth out." She's like, and I still had my wisdom teeth, and she was like, "And all your wisdom teeth. And you know what? Go ahead and pull that other one just in case." So I went and had 6 teeth pulled.
Wow.
This was, 2 weeks after being diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer. It was pretty dark times. And I sat the night I had my wisdom teeth pulled, and I didn't take any medication. I was actually anticipating going on a lot of pharmaceuticals, and I knew from my reaction to alcohol in my life and my sensitivities, I was like really trying to prep my body for the onslaught that was about to happen. So I took one ibuprofen after getting those 6 teeth pulled, and other than that, I did not take any pain medicine.
Wow.
But I was sitting out on my front porch and there was a storm. And my mom calls it my Lieutenant Dan moment, because I was just like, not screaming, but I was just like, God, I, I don't know. And then my mind went to the belief that God can heal and the belief that our bodies can heal. And the storm was incredible. It was not raining. It was just like a lightning bolt across the sky, and it was like lighting up, and it was just like so gorgeous. And I was just like, we are light beings, we are electric, we are, like our synapses, our systems are operating in, this miraculous way. And if I am able to heal, if there is a miracle there for me, then I believe it has to do with like electromagnetism. And I literally came inside and opened up my anti-cancer has like a PDF document they send you. It's like a booklet in the beginning. Like, here's all the things they can tell you. It's a wonderful compendium of like helpful things. Um, and I turned the page, and it was pulse electromagnetic frequency therapy. And I was like, okay. That sounds right, I guess. I need to get one of these really expensive machines. So I called one of my dearest friends who she loves. My kids call her TT because she and her husband are double income, no kids, and she's like just made it. She loves to spoil my kids and me, obviously, because I said, "What about a loan?" And she was like, basically having it delivered by the end of our call. So we were just so supported and held by our family and friends. And yeah, and I went with the Hugo. I had great experiences with the Aura Wave line at the health club where I frequented.
Right.
So yeah, but that I just felt like I was praying, and God answered, and then I was like, okay, this is part of it. And that's sort of been all along, just sort of listening to and watching for, following the sparkles, the signs, the breadcrumbs. I don't know, following something.
Right. Well, that's what a lot of people say that seem to go through healing is that they follow their intuition or their faith of where it's leading them. So okay, so you've done all these things, and this is great that people are hearing this because if you don't mind, I want to transition into you see the healing oasis, and obviously I think, just your background, you're probably like, okay, wait a second, being in nature, having my kids there, they have PEMF, they have the IVs, they have the exercise with oxygen. Now we have a hyperbaric oxygen chamber now, a private chef that's making you the food. I can see why this probably fit right with what you were doing. So tell me, at what stage were you when you looked at the Healing Oasis? And we're going to get into your test results afterwards, but obviously you had already been doing all these things. You already had a foundation, and then you came to the Healing Oasis. So maybe just talk about that for a bit.
So when my liver went wonky from the meds, my doctor was like immediately made me stop all supplements. So there was after the first month of treatments, I in that at that moment I went to my first radical remission retreat at the Omega Institute and I learned the 10 healing factors and I was like, okay, well if I can't have the medicine that they think I need, then I'm going to dig into each one of these. I'm going to like study them like my life is depending on it. And I went back. So then my liver still, it took a long time for her to recover. She's a workhorse. She's great. I love her. But she was really upset. So I guess 2 months after that, and my enzymes were still like hovering kind of high. Um, and then they came down and then or started to come down and the liver specialist was a little bit worried about my bilirubin. So she was like, okay, let's make sure that this isn't liver metastases. So I had a CT abdominal and chest scan and a CT bone scan. And that was at 3 months after starting treatments. And it was basically, it said no evidence of metastatic disease, which I got super excited about. But as my oncologist explained, my bone mets were uh, lytic. So they're like kind of not really a tumor, but like just evidence that cancer has been there, sort of eating away at my bones. And the CT bone scan doesn't show that kind of cancer. Either way, I took it as a win. And I felt like, I feel like sometimes healing can feel a little bit like one of those climbing walls, and you're just like slowly just finding where you can latch on and pull yourself up. And I was like, you know what? Oh, but the bone scan did show, I don't know why it wouldn't show the hip, but it showed two spots on my spine. So it showed on T2 and L4 on my vertebrae that I had cancerous lesions. Um, and I was in, but then they said it didn't show, my breast tumor didn't show up, and they were saying that the lymph didn't light up. The CT scan results were like almost miraculous already, and they were very measured and like don't get too excited. And I was like, well, too bad. I'm gonna get excited, and then I'm gonna also do what I can to hit these last areas, or at least focus in on these spots on my spine or even my original tumor spots. And um I was deep in the Mark Lintern's cell suppression theory and reading about hyperthermia and how a lot of spontaneous remissions can happen after people deal with infection and they have a very high temperature, and just kind of looking at wanting to get hyperthermia, and then knowing that the stuff around mistletoe was also very interesting in its relation to the immune system. And I am just talking at this point now. I've forgotten what the question
Well,
was.
I was going to ask, so then that obviously transitioned into you finding the Healing Oasis at that stage.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So that's where I was. I had the 3 month good scan, but we don't really know because CTs don't show as much as the PET. Um, and I was like, and they had originally done a PET, but then the second one they did was CT, but then So I just, and then the third one they requested was also a CT. And I asked my oncologist, I was like, well, wouldn't a PET be more true to, she kind of vacillated. She was like, PET, a lot of stuff lights up that you don't really have to worry about. But CT shows better in the soft tissue and organs if there's any metastases there. So I guess they usually do CT with stage 4, but they were doing PET with me because of the bone lesion. I don't know. Either way, I got a PET after the Healing Oasis. That was also very positive. Um, but
And why don't what before we get into the results, why don't you just quickly talk about your experience like at the Healing Oasis? I mean, as far as you'd already started down your healing journey, you'd done all these things. So what was it like for you coming to the Healing Oasis?
I tell everybody, I'm like, it was all I dreamed of and more. It was, I don't know, like I'm gonna start crying. Um, well, I remember of course, we were financially devastated by the year of cancer and all the alternative treatments we were attempting to do. And my sister was like, well, let's just do a last big push on a GoFundMe. And so our family and friends like really came through and, essentially paid for us to go. And I remember when I got there, I had just this like very driven, like, I'm gonna resolve these spinal metastases. This is what I'm here to do. And um I remember that first night, Jen sat outside the um dining room. What do we call it?
Yeah, the Rock
The
Eatery.
the Rock Eatery.
Yeah.
Sat outside with me and prayed because I felt so much pressure. I'd put a lot of pressure on myself to come there and to heal and to like do it right. And it was like, I don't know what it was about. I mean, Jen's amazing, so there's that. And then there's also the grace of what I feel like comes through your all's work as just faithful individuals is like this piece of you don't have to do anything here. Like I felt like there was this reassurance that I could just be, and not only that I could just be, but that I could be with my family. I could be without the constant sort of struggle of what I'm going to eat every meal. That's such a I mean that's like I don't even know if people understand what it feels like to be cooked for that much. And I struggled with it so much the first few days that my husband was not getting this food. It was It was hard. It was so hard to accept it because he's my rock and he a speaker of a rock eatery. He's the best. And it just was hurtful to like go receive and receive and receive. And I got used to it. Yeah, I mean, it took a few days, but I got used to it. Um, but I think the beauty of it was, I could read and relax and sleep when I needed. And there's just no like, it was sort of this timeless space where we didn't have the day-to-day obligations. And even though we had lifted and we stepped off the hamster wheel a little bit, um, thankfully I was set up with my job to have some long-term disability that allowed us to do that. But it was a practice. But even when you're here, somehow when you're in your own space or you're in your own routine, you're with your own root people and patterns of behavior, it's just so easy to fall into busyness, like to just be busy. Oh, and I think, I don't know who all I talked to about it, but it was maybe just like the clarity of like I think maybe I'm a little sensitive to EMF stuff. I don't know, but just being out, like you say, in nature, no Wi-Fi, no phone service, like just the sleep that I got. I sometimes I just lay in bed and I think about the sleep that I got in British Columbia, in Lumbee, at the Healing Oasis, because I'm just like it was this different quality sleep, And I don't know, it's just like it just felt so filled with purpose and love and hope, and it was really, I
Awesome.
think, one of the best experiences of my life. So,
Well, that means a lot to us, Emily. So we were so glad. We're hoping, obviously, we might see you again. That's the plan.
yeah,
Yeah, that's the plan.
yeah.
So
It's a goal
uh,
every year.
good. Awesome. We'd love to have you. So I'm going to transition to sort of get Dr. Caesar's input now as far as a doctor. He got to see sort of review your medical records prior to coming to the Healing Oasis. And now after you've come, you did get recent PET scans. So I sort of want to get Dr. Caesar's sort of perspective. And then we'll sort of talk about it from his perspective. So, Dr. Caesar, why don't you share your perspective of Emily and what you saw?
Sure. Hi, guys, and hi, Emily. We haven't even said hi.
Hi, I
I,
know. Sorry,
it's
I'm
it's so
talking to
nice.
both of you.
It's so nice to see you. Emily, even on when we chatted first, is such a vibrant personality. Certain people just exude this success, and it comes in every little tiny little bit, even their voice. Where it's a really important piece that Emily had, and so even within the first couple minutes. I had this great feeling that you could be really, really, really helped. And so much of it is with there's a difference between the naturopathic oncology side and the standard oncology side. The naturopathic oncology side is always like this. We always work together. We don't say, okay, this is your treatment. This is it. You're going to receive it like everybody else. I find what's important with everybody. Uh, and with Emily, she obviously wanted to do so well and do well with taking down the cancer because of her family. That's it's a big deal. And so we just wanted to do everything we could naturopathically to make that happen, which included a variety of therapies and as well as being at the Healing Oasis. So, looking at these new results here, because I just had a new glance at them, this is what we're after. This is what everybody kind of hopes for and everybody dreams of, is that, especially the bone lesions. Now, the bone lesions are tricky to conquer, because they're in an environment that can be difficult to get to. Nicely, with some of the therapies that we've been doing and that you've done, we build the strength of the bone. It's very, very important to do that through exercise and through the right supplementation, as well as using things like the PEMF, as well as using things like the hyperthermia device and the hyperbaric oxygen to get to the level of the bone, because that's very, very important. It's oddly enough, the breast cancer tends to go there. There's several spots that it can move to. One is it can go to the bones very, very often. It can go to the brain, oddly enough. It can go to the liver. So we have to keep an eye on all these things. And we keep an eye on all these things through our testing. Interestingly enough, the best device for tracking the liver is actually the MRI, which is the best device because it doesn't expose you to radiation. The problem with the PET scans and the CTs, as you know, Emily, because you've done so much research, you know everything when you go into it. You don't want to go in blindly. Is that it exposes you to radiation. Interestingly enough, what they found is they said that after about 6 CT scans or PET scans combined, is when the cancer tends to get worse from all that radiation exposure. So they've done some really great studies on it. So a few are fine. The MRIs I delight in because they don't expose you to anything at all. And the soft tissue that's in the liver can be very much a device that's used to track the liver. Now, your liver enzymes went up, and I believe it was Ibrance that you were taking.
Well, that was the second line. I was actually on Kisqali, or the ribociclib.
Mhm. Yeah.
But they
So,
wanted me to do Ibrance next. But
right.
I asked my oncologist to wait until I got back from Canada. And
Okay.
when I went in to get the PET results, she was like, you don't have
No
to go
need.
on Ibrance. I was
That's so,
like,
and that's so fantastic. That is so fantastic because there are so many effects from the
yeah.
Ibrance, and I've seen it just from working with so many cancer patients. So doing this with the natural therapies is just so beautiful and so fantastic because number one, it aligns with how you feel. Your gut, believe it or believe your gut all the time. When your gut says, I'm not sure about this, you're not sure about it. It's your gut is very much online with things. So the therapies that we had given you at the Healing Oasis, they were all in line, particularly for you, and particularly for your cancer. Looking at all of the ER positive, the PR positive, the HER2 negative, all these factors. It's very important to get a comprehensive, very individualized protocol. And so there's not just a blanket. Okay, this is what we do for breast cancer. Oh, or this is what we do for cancer, which is what happens very often. It has to be individualized, and even diet's individual for everybody. There are certain things that people like and certain things people don't like. So we like to make sure that
I'm
that
easy in that regard. I like
well,
everything.
like I said, all the roads led to the right spot. So everything that's been done all the way along, including all of our therapies that we've done, we use the artesunate and the IV vitamin C paired together very often. Those are such a great combination. As it turns out, the artesunate is also an it helps to fight against the organisms as well. So, you had a
Mhm.
root canal, and these root canals are interesting because they have a piece to play in illness as well. Sometimes greater for some people and sometimes not, as well as the toxicities. So we actually check to see for me, it's really important to know what are the toxicities and how much. And that's the nice thing about the urine toxic metals. We can say how much lead is there, which is very, very carcinogenic. So we like to get rid of that. And that was done through a provoke test and also the mold test, right? What was there? Exactly what was there. And those are very important steps in a holistic approach to helping you to get better, which is what the PET scan is just saying. Okay, you know what? The train is really, really clear here. It's looking really, really good, which is not the prognosis for stage 4. It right off the bat, like you said, the cancer oncologists say, you know what, this is trouble. We're not going to paint a rosy picture here at all. We're not. This is your prognosis, and let's move ahead, but don't expect too much at all. Don't expect that you're going to, resolve this, and when it does, it's a combination of so much that you do, so much of your help that you've got from all of your healthcare team, including us at the Healing Oasis, and we're just joyed that you can join us and that we can work together because that's the real thrill for me at doing this for 25, 26 years with cancer patients, is just the thrill of working together. And I really, really do love it, every minute of it. I really, really, really do, because I see how life-changing it can be.
I
Yeah.
pre Thanks, Dr. Caesar, for that. And it's just amazing, being able and Emily, I was gonna say, but I want to ask you before I forget this thought. What was it like to have somebody like Dr. Caesar, sort of in your corner before you came to the Healing Oasis? He reviewed your records, he helped put you on a protocol while you're here, and then obviously on follow-ups. What was it like just knowing that you had a doctor like that was in your corner when you came here?
I mean, I don't think that I would have done it without it. Or, if it were just the protocols or offerings, I would have been hesitant without an actual doctor on board who is overseeing and knows my care, like you said, who's looking at my bio individuality and, kind of taking into account me as a person. I think it's the not one of the biggest factors, but
Yeah.
it's huge. Like, as a even a person who, trusts my intuition, I do my own research and everything, but I still want I still want someone who knows their stuff to be kind of at the helm. Not that Dave knows a ton, but like an actual sort of some board certification of some variety. I don't know, or has the base of knowledge that Dr. Caesar has, and yeah, I
Well,
definitely.
and it helps that he can speak the lingo of, like, he knows all of the conventional treatments. So like when you talk about, oh, my oncologist is saying this or that, or and when he looks at the CT scan or the PET scan, he can actually talk to you as a doctor and say, okay, this is sort of what it's saying. So it's almost like you're getting a second opinion in a sense from a doctor that might see it from a different perspective.
Which is all when I'm an educator. I was a school teacher when I got my diagnosis, have taught yoga for years prior to that, health and wellness. And I have said literacy and multidisciplinary research will save our lives because, and that's, even multi within a discipline, like multidisciplinary, as in like all the sides of, different styles of practicing medicine. um, Cancer is so multifaceted. There's so many things that had to happen in exactly that way in order for it to transpire in your body. And if you are trying to treat it at one spot or like only looking at one thing, I just feel like there's no way. I mean, our bodies are systems, and I have looked at my care a lot of times as a system in and of itself. I have, and even, just to speak to the rest of the, crew at the Healing Oasis, I don't know who all will stay on or come back for new seasons, but Christine as an incredible intuit and like empath and beautiful person to kind of like who also had guidance that I hadn't got elsewhere. And then Shane with the food, feeding you from the soul, like really loving what he does, sending that love through the food, and can and his relationship with Dr. Caesar and how they work together and like they have this plan for you. It feels you're like held by this like family of, and I don't know, it's just like a really systemic attack on a very systemic disease.
I'm so glad you bring that up, Emily, because that was the vision of starting this place. Is there needs to be an approach where it's holistic, where it's not just, treatments, but it's the food, it's the environment, it's the you talked about intangible things, but I'm telling you, every time I interview somebody that is healed of stage 4 cancer, they always like focus on the intangible. And what I mean by that is you mentioned love and hope and receiving and gratitude. And I mean, everybody that I talk to that is healed, I'm telling you, I'm not exaggerating. Every single one has had that kind of attitude of, I need to receive love and have hope and faith, and just they're just so bubbling over with joy. And I see that in you, and I'm not surprised that you found healing, because maybe one day science is going to discover that all these intangible things that we can't really, maybe it plays a massive role in our healing.
Yeah. I well they do. I mean, the science is behind it obviously affects your immune system. And then that with the mistletoe treatments, I feel like I don't know. I read the book Mistletoe and the Emerging Field of Integrated Oncology while I was in Canada at the Healing Oasis, and it's just kind of mind blowing to think about Rudolf Steiner like coming up with this like weird harvesting of this plant that looks like a tumor on a tree and it like is one of the only plants, or it's the only plant that never touches the ground, and it fruits in the winter and dies off in the summer. So it's like out of sync with the rest of like nature. And, there's the whole like premise behind anthroposcopic medicine and how he looked at that and was like, this could help cancer.
Huh.
And he like harvested these things and put it in like a centrifuge or so. I don't know, some crazy things still happen to create mistletoe treatments. And I just feel like we can access, or we can download greater wisdom or consciousness of healing with our bodies by sub- submitting to the fact that the conscious mind is never going to know it all, like we can't, and the conscious mind can't fix it. Like just that, sitting, like I say, with Jen and praying that first night, it was like I had to shed the idea that I had to heal myself while I
Yeah.
was there, that I had to do this.
Yeah.
And as soon as I like shed that and was able to be present and yeah, have that experience, was just
By the way, this has been amazing, and I think so many people are going to be so encouraged, Emily, for just your story. And what would you say to those people that are watching this and they haven't received, maybe they thought they could find, I don't know, a magic bullet in one treatment that they tried. Maybe somebody said, hey, you got to do high dose vitamin C. So they went and did it, and things aren't working for them, and their cancer's getting worse. This happens a lot. I think a lot of people miss the idea of what you're saying is it's not one thing that did it. It's a combination of everything, whether it was spiritual, emotional, physical, but there was this massive combination of it all. So what would you say to somebody that maybe they're down right now because they're discouraged, their cancer seems to be growing, and what would your word of encouragement be to somebody that's listening to this?
um well, I had kind of an experience just a couple of weeks ago. I had some pain in my opposite breast, and like even my PCP was like, "Well, I think I feel something," and I felt it too. And then, but I think it was like towards the end of my hormone blocking cycle, and I held my brand new nephew who was super sweet but crying, and I think my body just sort of reacted, and it went away within days. But in those moments of fear and sort of almost like a heaviness, or like as close as maybe I would let myself get to dread, was um essentially that I believe that fear is a huge contributing factor to this dis-ease in your body. And I started, have you ever looked up or heard Dr. Zach Bush talk? He
I
is,
I haven't. Have you, Dr. Caesar? Dr. Zach Bush? No.
so he's an incredible triple board certified, started in, um, birthing babies in a third world country, and then became an ER doc, and then was an endocrinologist with a specialization in metabolic medicine. And then he actually created chemotherapies, and then he became a hospice and was palliative end of life care. And now, guess what he does now?
What does he do?
He promotes and advocates for regenerative farming and soil health. And so his whole, um, after all of that knowledge and after working and watching the human experience, he talks about death as a birth, which I mean, I think as, growing up Christian and having these beliefs, I had that belief, right? I thought I did, maybe. But the true recognition of, on every level, like on a scientific level, that we are light beings, and that zinc burst that happens at conception, like we don't know where that light comes from. And then him, after seeing people have near death experiences and then them moving on or dying, or him witnessing death so much, nobody knows when they're going to go, right? even if you are terminal, not terminal, whatever, you're never gonna know. So you have to make peace with that regardless. And I would say this disease is a gift to make right within yourself of like what you think that next step will be, what you think that birth is going to be at the end of your life. And um and maybe not even what you think it's going to be, but holding fast to the truth that it is a birth, regardless of your belief system. Because I consider myself a sort of a deconstructionist Christian, sort of. I've studied a lot of Buddhist and Hinduism, and I can appreciate so many different religions, but there's something very different about the acknowledgement that death is a birth,
Right.
period. And I think that fear, I don't know, it robs you of this life in a way that's either through the, I don't know, progression of the disease, or through some other, like systemic inhibition of your immunity against it, or whatever. It is only a disservice. The fear is only, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Is so poignant and true. And whatever you can do to feel it and really work on releasing it. And that's what radical remission was so huge for me, in that I did two workshops. I did my workshop at the Healing Oasis, and then I was like, this is my life now. So I trained to become a coach. I'm doing my own radical remission workshops. And I think the biggest part of it all is, I don't know, just knowing that there's nothing to fear. And that was sort of a message I got really early on from my very mystical Catholic aunt. She was like, "Now, who was your confirmation saint?" And I was like, Saint Gabriel. And she was like, "What does he always say first?" I was
Yeah.
like, I don't remember what. Be not afraid. Be not afraid. And so I think that, as hard as it can be, and it seems insurmountable sometimes, and I don't want people to repress anything, so I hesitate to say just don't be scared, but just like allow it, and then recognize that regardless of what happens, you're leaving the world the same way everybody else does,
Yeah.
right? But that way is a birth to something else, and just, hold on to that.
Yeah, that's amazing. What a great way to end, Emily. We just came up on the hour, but holy smokes, that was just amazing. What great advice for somebody just letting go of fear. Fear can rob us of so many things. And by the way, you don't have to have cancer to go through and understand what fear can do to you. I know firsthand. I'm a human. I've been through a lot. Any human being knows what it's like to have fear and how fear can rob you. And so, I think what you said, cancer can be a gift. It can make you come to the place where you have to let go and just realize that death is going to happen no matter what, and we have to face it. And maybe cancer sometimes allows people to be able to come to have that conversation that everybody seems to put off. So thank you for sharing, Emily. By the way, I was wanting to tell you this the whole time. I love your haircut. Looks great.
Oh,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah, it looks good. I love it. The short look.
Thanks.
Good.
I forgot it was long in Canada. I go back and forth over the years, but I was trying to trick my body into my pre-cancer my pre-cancer days. I was
I
like, I'm
like
going back.
I like it. And when you come to the Healing Oasis this summer, we'll have to coordinate. Maybe you can lead the workshop for radical remission while you're here.
I love it. I would be so honored, and I truly hope to make it all working and come back. I look at the pictures we took there so often. It's ridiculous. It is like dreamscape.
Yeah, it was awesome having you here. And yeah, so Dr. Caesar, any last words before we end?
Well, Emily, you just you really hit home about taking such a serious scenario and turning it into a gift. I
Yeah.
mean, that truly is extraordinary. It really, of all the troubles that people have, and this is why I love treating cancer, is just that so many have problems. Um, and I don't mention it to patients, obviously, but I work with the majority of stage 4 cancer patients, right? That's that's a big deal. And for Emily to grab it and say, okay, you know what? Let's take this. This is a gift, and let's move ahead and let's learn from this. And I think that's the biggest thing that you're taking away from this experience is let's learn and move ahead and let's have a different perspective on this than perhaps I'm given by my oncology side or whatever it might be. And so that perspective in itself is a leaping ground to the success that you've had.
Yeah. Thank you
Totally,
guys so much.
totally agree. And by the way, Jen is in the background. My family's having my family's having dinner, and she said to say hi to the kids here. She came in, say hi to the
Oh,
kids.
hi. They're off in bed now, but I will tell them you said hello.
Let them know tomorrow.
Okay, yeah, I will. Thank you guys. Good to
Awesome.
see you. I can kind of see your face, but
Oh, am I not in there?
There you
Oh,
are.
sorry.
oh, there you are. Hi, gorgeous. Oh, it's so good to see you.
To see you too.
Yeah.
Well,
Happy
that
New
was
Year.
yeah. Happy New Year to you. Then say obviously I saw Jake, say hi to him, and it was just great. Thank you, Emily, so much for doing this. You have no idea how much this is going to encourage people. I know Dr. Caesar feels the same. We love when people come on like this and share this with us. So thank you so much, and hopefully we'll see you again in the summer.
Yeah, pleasure's all mine. Have a good night, guys.
Good night.
Thank you.